This video will attempt to address the vegan argument as I've understood it myself from a purely logical perspective. In order to do that, I'm going to limit the scope. I'm going to be avoiding health and environmental arguments as far as possible because I intend to make separate videos on those. Present this argument as 5 premises and a conclusion I've drawn from it. I will also present some counter-arguments that I've heard to the argument from this perspective, some counters to those, as well as a couple of side points as well. As a society, we hold the consensus opinion that we should avoid causing suffering to one another. We do not wish to suffer, so wish to live in a society where we mutually avoid suffering through not inflicting it on others. The common perception of this is that we do extend this to animals, so most people will not directly harm animals, but in the case of animal agriculture, will rely on others to do so for them. We can infer that animals are capable of suffering through observation of them. Most animals will take action to defend themselves, whether that be fighting or trying to avoid the so-called fight or flight response. And most creatures with centralised nervous systems have at least some kind of analogue to our pain receptors. Further to this, animals in many cases have been observed to suffer in ways other than physical pain. An example of this would be that, and I've taken this from a BBC article which I'll link below, louder high-frequency calls were produced by cows when they were separated from their calves, not in visual contact, and preceded nursing. In times past, the consumption of animal products may have been of benefit to cultures who had lack of access to certain nutrients not available to them through plant sources, although these sources are now available to us through plant resources and other synthetic sources, certainly in the Western world. Basic needs, I think we can agree, such as avoiding pain, taking care of our physiological well-being, are more important than our need for pleasure and stimulation. The law of non-contradiction is that you cannot suppose the same thing to be true and to be false, meaning that all things being equal, to hold a thing as true in one case and false in another is a double standard. So, if you cannot demonstrate a justification for inflicting suffering on a creature other than alleviating your own suffering, you're contradicting your own view that suffering should not be caused unintentionally. If we reject causing unnecessary suffering, and we have no need to fulfill a need as or more basic than survival in doing so, then it is contradictory to inflict suffering on others. This includes animals, as they can be demonstrated to experience suffering. The only path to completely avoid this, in as great a way as is possible to ensure your own survival, is to be vegan. So I'm going to now present a couple of common objections to these arguments that I've faced myself, and counters to those. Do feel free to leave any of your own and your own counters to those as well. The animal products are necessary for healthy living, thus attempting to lower their consumption on the scale of necessity, from being an enjoyable activity to a requirement for survival. This is demonstrably falsifiable by the existence of healthy vegans, as well as the existence of human communities who have survived for a long time on low or no animal product diets when contrasted with the modern Western diet. I'll leave a link to some information about that below. Because a tradition or a religion claims that it is ethical to consume animal products, then it is inherently ethical to do so. I do not intend to make this video into a religiously focused one, but I will point out that in these cases, the person making that claim does have the burden of proof. Often this is quite simply an appeal to tradition. Personally, I have seen this argument used as a diversionary tactic as well, attempting to reframe the discussion as one about religion. Although obviously that's not always the case, and you should not assume that of your interlocutor. I'm going to just present a couple of other points. My first is that vegans do not bear burden of proof. As a society, we have the ethical rule that we must cause the least suffering. Therefore, as the carnistic position involves the violation of this principle for reasons that do not reduce suffering overall, like they wish to eat meat for pleasure rather than for survival, in the context of the Western world at very least, it is incumbent upon them to provide justification for continuing to cause suffering in this way, not the vegan to demonstrate otherwise. That said, in practical terms, it is quite often the role of vegan to educate the carnist, largely due to the level of propaganda available to the carnist, and the fact that quite often as a culture we do accept this double standard simply through not questioning it. Which I have personally had some success with, is to ask your interlocutor what would ethically allow them to be killed and eaten without objecting themselves. If they cannot do so, then you can ask them why that is. If they argue that their being human in and of itself is justification, you can deconstruct this, which in my experience will result in appeals to human intelligence, which can be countered by pointing out that we do not eat the intellectually handicapped, or human civilization, which is simply a difference between us and animals. It's not a justification in and of itself. There is no logical link between having a civilization and not eating the creature that has a civilization. If we were, for example, if we were to find a group of humans who did not exist in civilization as we understand it, I don't think we'd consider it ethical to kill and consume them. Thank you very much for listening to this. Do please comment below, point out anything I may have missed, anything I may not have understood, or if you have a different take on it, please let me know. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Cheers.